A woman is stabbed to death by a literal madman, and race riots break out on X. The Fed has seemingly lost control of the ability to control interest rates. You're not going to want to miss that. Israel bombs Qatar, and Trump is not happy. Russia claims crypto is just the US's plan to export more inflation, and they're not necessarily wrong. PBD goes on Jubilee in capitalist versus 20 anti-capitalists. An MIT tech company has made mental telepathy real, and an AI studio backed by OpenAI is set to launch their first animated feature in 2026. Things are looking crazy.
We just found out Charlie Kirk has passed. He's no longer with us. He has died after the results of the shooting at UVU.
This is a moment where I think people are going to react incredibly strongly, and I would urge everybody to isolate what happened, to not look at it as being this is the entire left versus the right. This was a gunman who unfortunately became convinced that he saw things more clearly than anybody else. And that he had to take action to save his vision of the country and make it about that person and this horrifying tragedy. Don't make things worse by seeing it as that team has tried to kill my team. Because once we make it about the teams, that's where things will really escalate, and people will feel like they need to get theirs back. And this is how this really spirals out of control. So we've got to let the justice system do its work, give this person due process, and hopefully instead of responding to this tragedy as a call to arms, that we see this as that warning of like, this will only get worse. And if history is anything, moments like this where somebody is fatally shot often sparks that huge violent reaction. And all that will do is guarantee the size of the tragedy is magnified 1,000-fold. And so recognizing this moment as that call to find a path back to each other, that's going to be so unpopular. I get it. This is devastating. But somebody at some point has to be the one to say, all right, pause, slow down, define where we want to go, figure out how we get there in a sensible way. Those are the great men of history. Those are the people that are remembered, are the ones that can find that way to cross the divide rather than exacerbate it. But look, history is a long string of people fighting until one side is just too fatigued to continue. And so I don't want to pretend like that's not a real option, but boy, it isn't what I want. It's not what I want for America. History is just too clear. The only outcome on the other side of that, no one will say, oh, we won. Everyone will have lost. And if we know that that's true, then how do we short circuit that and get to bringing ourselves back together? I think it is clearly defining where we want to end up. I think it is thinking from first principles, mapping out in a way that is historically grounded in terms of, okay, what can we learn? How have people handled moments like this before that's worked out in a way where we don't end up in pockets of violence? I don't think this is going to be the start of a civil war, but boy, could it be a moment on a road that leads to significant violence, and that I would not want to see.
Yeah, just some facts of the case. There was a Turning Point USA event at the Utah Valley University. He was at the Q&A portion. Some people say he was kind of winding down. The shot was a sniper shot. It was fired over 200 yards away, or a rifle shot. Allegedly, the suspect is in custody, but Twitter has been all over the place.
There's footage of a guy who looks like a boomer, down on his knees.
Yeah, some people saying it's not him and he's just wrong place, wrong time. So that's still up in the air. But again, just at the very minimum, thoughts and prayers to Charlie Kirk. I know he's a young father. He got 2 kids. I think his son just turned 1, so wife. So you just regardless of where he stood politically and all these things, you never want to see a wife, 2 kids, not have a dad, not have a husband. Sure, his family, brother, sister, all those things are struggling. You never want it to end this way. It's a sticky, nasty situation. I watched the video and I immediately regretted it. It made me feel weird. Even talking about it right now, it's just like, there's one thing to play politics and one thing to talk about what policies are good and bad and things like that. But when it's a human being losing a life, this sobering moment. I hope that we actually internalize it and try to actually change the directory of the country.
Here's the bad news. We're really not going to. This is where I will remind myself that we are automata that just bounce off of each other. And the reality is that people, in moments like this, in populist moments, people become utterly convinced that political violence is a useful tool that needs to be used in a moment like this, where everything is an existential threat. People trust themselves, they trust their emotions, and they believe they see things clearly, like they alone see things clearly, and they have to do something, and we have to take action, not understanding that the way that you move forward is with political debate, that you have to talk about these issues. You have to allow people to say things that you really disagree with. And once you hit that breaking point where people are trapped in their feelings, they're completely convinced in the righteousness of their actions, then you start going down this path, which is exactly where we were in the 60s, where people just really believed, oh, the right answer to this person is such a threat, we have to kill them, we have to neutralize the threat, not realizing they are the exact monster that they're afraid of. And this is heartbreaking, for sure, heartbroken for Charlie Kirk and his family. But when you step back and look at this as what some huge swath of the West is going through, how much political instability, not that Nepal's in the West, but you've got Nepal literally burning their own, I don't think it's a Capitol building, but their parliament or whatever. Early reports that some of the ministers were being executed, that the president's wife was burned alive. You've got things popping off in France. Obviously what's going on here in America, it's just these things, once they get started, they just escalate. And so my call to everybody would be to remember that you can't trust your emotions. You cannot trust that they are accurate. And we need to be looking at a way to come together. We need to be looking at a way to find a path out of this. Otherwise, it will be ever escalating violence until we get to the point where there's been so much violence, so much bloodshed that we're just so fatigued that we back off. But when the cycle is that knowable, and I think this is the part that drives me crazy, when the cycle is that predictable, that we've seen this happen enough times that instead of having to go all the way through things, feeling things getting to the point where we have to have so much violence and bloodshed that we get fatigued before we stop, is just ridiculous. This is knowable. If you are pulling away from each other, if you are viewing them as an existential threat, then people are going to be violent. Like, we have to find common ground.
Is this more so an infection, or is this like a virus? Like, an infection, you take 3 antibiotics for a week, you're good, you're back to go. You can kind of get rid of this sickness. But when you have a virus or a flu, you just have to kind of beat the fever. You just have to wait it out. You have to get to the other side. Society is bubbling up with those things that you mentioned, the Trump assassination, the Minnesota legislature, and then now Charlie Kirk. Is this just something we're just gonna have to ride out, you think? Is there something we can do? Is this, if Trump says the right set of words, if the right and the left shake hands, like, what do you think can help us get out of this?
So to answer the analogy itself, this is more like a virus. It gets in, it takes over the cell, it turns the cell into a replication machine, and then things just get worse and worse and worse until the body responds with the fever, and you're basically, to push the analogy to its limits, it's like you have to heat things up to the point where people get that fatigue, and the virus encounters an immune response that is so stiff that it begins to recede. So that's the analogy. But by way of, is there hope that we can avoid that? Of course, if there are enough voices of reason. The problem is, I'm not expecting a lot of voices of reason. Voices of reason don't get a lot of clicks. Trump is constitutionally incapable of calming things down. His rhetoric is going to be escalatory. He's going to talk about, how violent the left is, how out of their minds they are, all of that. And here's the thing. Both sides are in that position. That is literally what a populist moment is. A populist moment is where you're so stuck in your feelings. You are so convinced of your righteousness. You are so convinced that the other side is an existential threat that you want a strong man that will go and slap them around. And when each side feels like that, the expedient solution is just to kill them. And it is these really powerful reminders of what lurks inside the human mind. And the human mind is capable of tremendous, I mean, evil's probably a misleading word because it sends people off into like a different place. People need to stay grounded. Humans will destroy the bodies of other humans to get to an expedient result that they want. And that sort of, not banality, but that just simple, I'm just going to go tear this person apart. And because I believe that I'm right, like my humanity detection just shuts off.
Yeah.
And yeah, people do it all the time. They do it all the time.
I feel like I've been doing content with you for a while. This is a much somber tone. It does sound like. Where do you think that, like, what about this specific thing do you think is hitting you in a different way?
I probably should have felt this way during the Minnesota assassinations, but the people weren't known to me. I didn't see the footage. And so seeing this happen in real time, Charlie Kirk obviously being a figure that is sort of in our beat, if you will, of the things that we cover, is hyper on my radar. So this one just feels like that escalatory step. So much of what I've been trying to do is de-escalate, show people ways to think through this stuff, where the punchline doesn't have to be the other side is evil. And so this just feels like, okay, things are now that much more difficult for us to pull back from the brink. I often think about things in terms of the economics of it, like how do we pump the brakes? How do I help people? How do we pump the brakes so we don't take on so much debt that it just makes it absolutely impossible for the average person to get ahead? How do we give people information such that even if we don't solve the systemic issues, which I have no faith that we're going to solve the systemic issues of debt, deficit spending, money printing, I think that's just going to keep going. And so I feel like I'm constantly warning people about the fact like, hey, you will eventually go off the cliff. And this feels like that first time where one of the wheels just went off the cliff. And so we now have a landmark moment to be able to plant the flag. There's going to be a big reaction to this. And it isn't going to be metered. It isn't going to be, we need to come together. It's going to be bloodlust. The odds of America coming to like a sort of explosive violent head, I think is effectively zero, but we're already in a cold civil war. And the question is, how bad do what I call the pockets of violence get? And once you start getting into tit for tat, like if Charlie Kirk dies, then he, and I really hope that does not happen, he becomes a symbol of something. Somebody else then will feel aggrieved enough that it increases the odds that somebody does something back to the other side, which I certainly don't want to see. I grew up in an era where I saw how good it could be. And so there's a real like sadness to watching first the economic isolation of America, and now that economic isolation leading to the political violence is really, really heartbreaking. So for all of, because again, it's not just America right now, for everybody that's going through it right now, this is very sad. Human tragedy is going to abound, is my concern.
I was watching some of the streams when we first had the breaking news. So I was in the comments of Destiny and Hassan, and I'm kind of seeing, of course, mixed reactions. There's people who are doing memes. There's people who are laughing. There's people who are kind of dunking on it. What would you say to those people? How would you get them to properly respond to this moment?
I think all of that stuff is going to happen. So I'm not going to pretend that it's not. One person's tragedy is another person's comedy. One person's loss is another person's victory. So we're going to go through all of that. The only thing that I would try to put into culture is there is a solution. There is a path out of this. And if people look for it, they will find it. If they don't look for it, then obviously they're not going to find it. And so if people put their time and energy into like, we can't let them do this, we've got to escalate, we've got to fight back, well, then that's what's going to happen. And people are going to play that out. So yeah, this is one of those, I will do whatever small part I can to at least plant the seed that there is another option. There is a way to come together. There is a way to understand that the human mind is working against us right now. The human mind wants us to be on teams. It feels very safe. The scarier things get, the more we crave the safety of a tribe. So the more likely people are to push harder into their camps. And yeah, there is a sense of you have to be willing to put yourself out there into the breach, as it were. The moderates are the first people that are killed in a revolution, which is wild, but nonetheless true because they don't have a team. And so they're the easy target. I would ask people to define what needs to be true for them to earn their own respect. I do admittedly fear that for a lot of people, the willingness to fight is the thing that's going to make them earn their own respect. For me, it is to constantly try to get people to deal with cause and effect, to understand the way that the human mind operates, to understand the role that envy plays, to understand what a populist moment is, how we end up getting here, that it's fear-based. Once people are locked into that fear, the likelihood that they push onto a team, the likelihood then that they're just trying to win, that they want their team to be victorious and they don't care what happens to the other person, that we do this thing known as othering, that we literally dial down the sense that the other person is a human. And so all of those things lead to something that is incredibly unpleasant for everybody. Like that's one of those things where nobody wins. And so to me, the cause and effect of the situation is so clear and it's so tied to economics. And I know that I fear, because I don't want to believe that anything is predestined, but I fear that where people go is instead of dealing with the economic root cause of so much of this stuff, they're just going to deal with the surface level, the Hatfields versus the McCoys, and it just becomes the left versus the right in the way that we've got men versus women, not understanding the left and the right need each other. They are evolution's answer to how do you get a very large group of people to cooperate flexibly and you don't become pathological on the right and become overly rigid and authoritarian. And you don't become pathological on the left and become the suicidal empathy and compassion where all you have left are freeloaders because everybody's just trying to take the free ride. And so the two groups are both prone to pathology. And it is only when they work as a friction-led coalition, because you do need that dynamic tension between the two. I don't expect them to see the world the same. But you have to want the presence of the other person. You have to understand that you, no matter how convinced you are that you're right, that evolution has seen fit to have both personality types. Obviously, everybody's on a spectrum, but you've got both personality types for a reason. And once you understand, oh, myself left to my own devices, I will not be as dynamic as I am in partnership with somebody who thinks differently than I do. We both have to be well-intentioned. We both have to share a common vision for where we want to end up, or you will inevitably pull in opposite directions. But in coaching entrepreneurs and just in my own entrepreneurial life, I've seen this a lot, where you'll get a CEO type and you'll get an operator type, and they both think the other person is a moron. And for whatever reason, they just cannot see that we work as a team and the other person just thinks differently. They're not stupid. They think differently. And when the right looks to the left and thinks you guys are stupid, when the left looks at the right and thinks you guys are stupid, you end up where we are right now. You've got to look at the other side and say, I don't agree with you, but as long as we agree on where we're trying to get to, it's going to be building a coalition that makes us do the compromising and seeing the other side that's going to get us to a better outcome. But it just... while humans are very capable of it, and when things are right, we do it extraordinarily well. When things break, humans are capable of tremendous violence. Okay, guys, with that, here is the rest of the episode. What is about to follow, obviously, is going to be very different in tone because all of this was recorded before Charlie was shot.
Twitter, man, it's happening. Race War 2025. First, they gave us Daniel Penny. Then they gave us the lady at the park. And now we have random train violence. So I'm very apprehensive of showing the video itself. I'm going to link to Alexis Jones's X.
Don't show.
I'm not playing it.
Thing.
But if you guys want to see the full thing, he has a full 4-minute version, the before, the after, and then the people coming over and helping her eventually.
Yeah, that one is a watch at your own risk.
Yeah,
I've seen enough videos now of people that transition from alive to dead. It does something weird to my brain. I do not enjoy it. So watch that one at your own risk. It will stay with you for a while. But for people that don't know the setup, woman gets on a train, sits down in front of somebody who unfortunately, as we get the facts, has schizophrenia. His own mother said, please do not release him from prison. He will hurt. I don't know if she said the word kill, but I guess he beat his own sister brutally. And so the mom had been advocating for him to stay in prison. He's been arrested 14 times. I don't know if he's convicted of felonies every time he was arrested or not, but back out on the streets, and he just stabs her. There's no interaction between the two of them whatsoever. Now, what X would like you to believe is the real lead is that she's white and he's black. That's so crazy to me that when you think about from first principles, if your level of analysis is solely that this is about race, I cannot track how you parse the world. If you were going to solve this and you said, hey, how do we stop this guy from killing anybody? Let's evaporate racism. Will he not kill anybody? I would say he may not kill that person because he may have some other algorithm running in his brain, but this is somebody with schizophrenia. He's got voices telling him that he needs to do a thing. And so he beat his sister. I have zero reason to believe that that was race motivated. This is a guy who, if you were to solve for one problem, that would dramatically reduce the likelihood that he kills somebody. It would be to solve his schizophrenia. So yes, once you have someone who is a literal madman, they're going to have an algorithm running in their brain. And this algorithm it seems to be because he says when he kills her, I got that white girl, I got that white girl. But he's schizophrenic. That's the problem from where I'm sitting. So there was the Son of Sam guy that was like, the dog told me I had to kill people. So it's like schizophrenics are going to kill. That would be not all schizophrenics, but when they kill, they're going to play some tape in their brain. It was something that pushed them forward. So I'm not saying that race doesn't play into this, but I am saying if you're going to focus on a problem, race is not the level of analysis when the person has schizophrenia.
It's been interesting to see the responses from this because I think that this has been used as a lot of people's almost litmus test of saying, see, this is why insert a bunch of racist scientists not backed by science claims. Benny Johnson came out with a whole thread of it's because he doesn't have a father. That's why he killed her on the train.
This is what I'm talking about. There are probably 100 examples you could give where it's like, okay, this person does not know how to emotionally regulate themselves. They did not develop any discipline. They ended up growing up on the streets where to earn respect and to thrive, you had to cultivate your willingness to be violent. And so all of those things are going to shape your brain development. So yeah, point to those and say, okay, you have a problem where you do not have a person in the household that's able to draw aggressive boundaries, that's able to be a imposing physical force, an imposing force from a disciplinary standpoint to say, these are the things that are acceptable, these are the things that are not acceptable. Great. If you want to have that conversation, I'm not saying that's not a worthy conversation to have, but when the person doing the attack is schizophrenic and nobody's talking about that, that's multiples of absurd higher to me than when nobody's talking about the race. Sure, get into the race part, get into why somebody with schizophrenia would be running an algorithm about race, fine. But if that's where you start, that's patently absurd.
And there's been a lot of comments in the chat already about why isn't the media talking about it? You are the media. You guys are the media. Elon Musk retweeted it. Every right-wing conservative is talking about it. Fox News did a whole segment on it. CNN had a panel on it. So this is my thing, right? Because I think Elon said if this was a black man, if this was a black girl getting killed by a white man, people would have rioted already. And it was like, yeah, black people probably would have turned up for it. So if white people, you feel this enraged about what happened on the train, go outside, go walk, go riot. But it seems like you want other people to get as mad as you feel right now. And that's the part that I'm thinking we're just getting caught in, like, what are we actually talking about? Yes, we should be. This is a criminal justice problem. Yes, he shouldn't have been out. Yes, he's violent crime. Yes, it's not okay to stab white people on the train. Like, I know things that I think I don't have to say out loud. I feel like I now have to say out loud.
You have to say them out loud right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
go ahead. Sorry.
no, but then but on the flip side, it's like, yes, this is bad. We need to, we should be mad about it. Yet you guys are mad about it. You're tweeting about it. You're people are talking about it, but I think they want New York Times to release a full page 4-part article about it. And it's just like, why do you need that to validate that this is wrong, this is bad, all these other things? So I don't understand that lack of the media isn't doing it for me, when the theme of the world since 2020 is the media doesn't tell you the full story of anything. So
we'll be back to the show in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the skills you don't have time to learn. There are dozens of expert level skills that would transform your life. Negotiation, decision-making, persuasion, leadership. But you cannot spend years mastering each one. I am sad to report, you don't have time to read every book by every expert. That, though, is the exact problem short form solves. Take negotiation. It impacts your salary, your relationships, even getting your kids to listen. Some of the best techniques come from Chris Voss, the FBI's former lead hostage negotiator, in Never Split the Difference. You can spend weeks reading that book and still struggle to apply the techniques. But short form changes that. Their guides aren't just summaries, they're created by human writers who extract the core frameworks and show you exactly how to apply them. Stop making decisions by guesswork. Click the link below and get a free trial and 3 months off the annual plan to access the decision-making systems behind every major breakthrough. And now, let's get back to the show. Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah. And what I think we're witnessing is people are coming face to face. So I've talked a lot about volume and velocity of information. Mm-hmm. So we live in an era where this is the whole James Burnham argument is you are always going to have elites. The elites are always going to try and control the narrative. But we are now living in a social media era where you can't control the narrative. It's going to come at you from every direction. And so now everybody's going to put their narrative forward. And what you see people pushing back against is they're seeing in real time that the New York Times is a narrative control machine, and they're struggling with that. And you'll see even like when we assess to do a deep dive, we'll look at, okay, we know these 3 to 5 things would pop. But then I have to look at them and go, but which ones do I actually believe are true? Because to write a video that I know will do well, but I don't actually believe it, for me, as somebody who's like number one priority in life is to earn my own respect, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do something that I don't believe is true, but I know it would perform well because it speaks to an emotion that people are in. Once you understand that the people tribe up in a populist moment, they are in their feelings. Yeah. Once you understand, oh, they're in their feelings, they're going to tell a narrative partly because they're trapped in their own frame of reference. So it's what they believe, it's what they want to see. And they understand, because they are intelligent, they understand the potency of controlling a narrative, of constructing and controlling a narrative. And once you understand that there's so much efficacy to controlling a narrative, that if you can control a narrative well, you can sway society, then you understand, oh, for whatever reason, they're morally gray or however you want to think about it, or they feel so righteous that this idea is so important, or it's so self-serving, whichever bucket you want to put them in, that I need to control the narrative and I need to say the thing. So of course, on both sides, whether you're Benny Johnson or whether you're the New York Times, like you're going to cover it in one specific way. Watch how people cover the thing that supposedly is bad on their team to figure out, like, what are they optimizing for? Are they optimizing for team support? Or are they optimizing for, they have an internal locus of like, this is what I believe to be true, and so I'm going to push for this thing? Are they fair-minded and they're always trying to connect with the physics of the situation? They're trying to think of first principles. Like, watch how they build the bricks. The vast majority of anybody in front of a camera, they are building up from a team sport mentality. This is what my team believes. This is how I keep my tribe happy, and I'm going to do this thing. And this is why I would highly encourage people, even if you have a violent negative reaction to him, Sam Harris is not playing team sports. Mm-hmm. He will occasionally align with a team, and he will occasionally say things I think are like properly unhinged, but I don't think he ever says something that he doesn't actually believe. So you need to find people like that who will say something they believe when it's hyper unpopular. So you can at least touch base. You're not always going to agree with them, but you can touch base with them. You can figure out what the building blocks are that they're constructing their worldview from. And that is where this gets interesting. But the collision that we're seeing right now is people are ideologically driven. They want the other side to admit that they're wrong because this is a team sport. They want to score points by saying, see, do a search on the New York Times, and they mention George Floyd 862,000 times, and they mention the Ukrainian woman 0 times. Mm-hmm. And for them, that's like a big gotcha. That is the setup. So New York Times isn't going to suddenly be like, oh, actually, we're fair and impartial. So yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to get the average person to accept that everybody's just trying to control a narrative. I don't even know if we need to. But if you don't want to drive yourself crazy, don't waste any time. Everybody is spinning a narrative, period.
Yeah. I want to talk about this Overton window shift because right now there's been a tweet that's been circling it starts with Stag Wyatt. He says, white people have a simple choice to make. 1, be conquered, enslaved, raped, and genocided while being called racist. 2, reclaim our nations and our dignity while being called racist. It's that simple. American Patriot account retweeted it. The 2 options are clear. And Elon Musk retweeted it, yes. So for me, this is, I think, the bigger, I don't want to say concern, but do you think that this is something that can start a movement that might be letting it go away?
And start a movement that might be letting it
and I'm gonna kind of tag this with the JD Vance tweet about like, I don't care if, as long as it's a drug cartel, I don't care what the military does, they could just bomb a boat. But that cuts out due process. Like there's this thing where sometimes we want justice and we give up our freedoms. We might turn anarchy, we might turn revolution.
Okay, it's so important. Yeah. I want to stay with racism for a minute.
Okay.
And then we can get to how that dovetails into the JD Vance thing, but just to like take one issue at a time, because I worry these things start to conflate so fast that the just amount of things that people have to parse through becomes impossible to formulate an opinion.
Copy.
So staying with race, what I think is happening is racism is obviously a real phenomenon. It's what I call school of fish. For whatever reason, all salmon hang out with salmon, and maybe it's just as simple as mating, I don't know. But anyway, all salmon hang with salmon, all trout hang with trout, right? You just people group up in schools of fish. Yeah. So humans will cue off of visual cues that you're part of my tribe. And so given from an evolutionary perspective, being able to thin slice somebody very rapidly as either in-group or out-group would be incredibly important. So skin color is just this screaming alarm bell that this person is not in-group, out-group. Mm-hmm. Religion comes along, which would have been, just so late in human evolution. But from our perspective, it feels like it's been here forever. Mm-hmm. But in reality, that's going to come along pretty late. You're starting to be Homo sapiens at that point. So religion allows you to convey a value system very rapidly through symbology. So I can wear a cross, you see my cross, and now all of a sudden it's like, I don't care that he's white or I don't care that he's black. We have the same symbol. We believe in the same God. So I've just imparted a value system to say you're in tribe, not out tribe, even though there's this visual representation that would otherwise make us believe. Okay, so we have been living through this incredibly bizarre moment that did not start in 2020, but that was such a flashpoint that we can sort of pick up the conversation with BLM, George Floyd.
And everybody was at home watching TV. So,
which exacerbated everything 1,000-fold. So now you've got this, to your point about the Overton window beginning to shift. At first it was, you're a racist if you say anything wait, hold on a second, I don't see anything in him in the interaction between Derek Chauvin and George Floyd that makes me think this is specifically race related. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's white. Yes, he's black. But does he say words to that effect? So anyway, that would get shut down immediately. And I remember George Floyd was my awakening to that there was something going on. And I ended up spending Jesus, dude, like 3 hours trying to come up with like a 15-second post on it. Cause I was like, like it felt so dangerous. And now what I see happening is people for so long were canceled, debanked, deplatformed. Like it just became impossible to say the things that you thought were true. And so it started pushing people down this more radical path of like being angry, being frustrated that they couldn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. So that created a necessity to move the Overton window, because when you're not allowed to speak, you're not allowed to think, you're not allowed to put your ideas out there and get the feedback. Also, just articulating an idea out loud forces you to realize, oh, wait a second, the emotions that make me think I understand this well, as soon as I have to say the words, I realize I can't say the words. I don't understand this as well as I thought I did. And so that all begins to break down. So people have this impetus to say, no, I need to talk about this. I need to be able to hear other people that are talking about this. I need to be able to present my ideas and get the feedback. And so they pushed so hard. And now what we're seeing is like this massive pendulum swing where you get the Matt Walshes of the world who are like, no, this is pure race and we just need to be able to talk about it. Nick Fuentes, pure race, we just need to be able to talk about it. And that to me, again, I think is the wrong level of analysis. I think that this is about value system, and religion to me is the very thing that proves this is about values and not about anything else. And that you can, if you have a larger value system like religion, it will unite people of different ethnicities, no problem. But we do need that rapid way to communicate value system. In a social media age where you see something like this, it just becomes like the most common denominator, basic thing that everybody understands intuitively, which is race. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm saying the problem here is that the level of analysis is wrong. So race is a part of what's happening, mm-hmm. for sure. But it's really a values problem. And if we can't move people out of the mindset of race down into the mindset of values, you'll never be able to solve the problem, because you'll be up here trying to steer things based on commentary about race, and then the problem doesn't solve.
So let's break that down from a value system. Let's kind of go, because from the race level, it's black versus white. Yep. This black man is bad. 1 out of 22% of black men, all this other stuff, and this precious white woman who's attacked by a monster. And then you go to that. So if we're at the second level of value system, what are the clashes from that perspective?
Okay, so the easiest one, because I think there's the most data on this, is the importance of men in a family unit. Mm-hmm. And once you create policies that erode the social pressure for men to remain in a relationship, to have responsibility for their family, mm-hmm. What ends up happening is, and it's really twofold. So you create an economic incentive to remove men from the household. Mm-hmm. Then you have the social aspect of what men do is toxic, and that they're really blank slates anyway. And so we should they wouldn't use the words feminize, but like it is feminization. So we should be feminizing men. We shouldn't be having them pull their kids up short. We shouldn't be having them, waking their kids. Like, if you know, Bedros Keuilian runs this whole fathers and sons camp where like it's basically militaristic. And so they're waking these kids up early, making them do hard things, crawl through the mud, like deal with freezing weather, all this stuff. And people are like, I don't want that. And so you've got this, the removal of males and then the feminization of males. And that, from where I'm sitting, stems from a confusion about men and women being the same. Men and women are different. They are evolutionary answers to very different questions. And women are the sexual gatekeepers. So men, from an evolutionary perspective, are the answer to what do women need to effectively, safely have children. Mm-hmm. And so they've made us bigger, they've made us stronger, they've made us hyper ambitious, they've made us super responsive to sexual manipulation is encouragement. I always want to use a more positive word, but it's just so much easier to like, once you understand.
Manipulation.
Women help you be a better man by denying you access to sex. Mm-hmm. And so it's been this incredible partnership that we've worked out. But all of that now has just imploded. So the social setup that we have now is asking and answering the question, what happens to society when you feminize men and just remove them from the child rearing equation? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, it's bad. And children do not regulate their emotions. And the bad news is when a man does not regulate his emotions, when he does not learn how to do that as a kid, then some of them will break violent. And men are hard to stop because we have turned them into these hyper-aggressive, we being sexual evolution, hyper-aggressive, physically stronger, much more likely to take risks, half of the species, and now you're seeing it run amok.
And then the last part of this piece, I do want to get to the community. I see you guys popping off. We're definitely going to take some of your comments. But Matt Walsh made an argument, and we don't necessarily need to play the video, but his point now is with something like this happening, he wants to bring back rope hanging. I want somebody hanging from a rope 24 hours later. Donald Trump and what he's doing with the National Guard, trying to put a more pressure on law and order. Should this be a wake-up call to capital punishment? Should this be a wake-up call to how we litigate some of these cases? Do you think that there should be a natural cause that like maybe violent criminals shouldn't be released? We should bring back 3 strikes. Do you think that there should be some type of criminal justice reform piece at the end of something like this?
So again, level of analysis. One, yes, you're going to need to do that because you cannot, if you don't have a society that's safe, that society is going to spend an inordinate amount of their time just mental and emotional resources like trying to protect. And we're living in a populist moment. We're watching what it looks like economically when you protect yourself. It's very different than when you have high trust, cooperation. You get a lot more done. You can advance a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so now you'll get that at the individual level where it's all protectionist. So I think that's bad. So you do need to do something to address that because we are in the situation that we're in right now. So yeah, you need to do something to stop violent crime. But that's treating the symptom, it's not treating the cause. So when I hear that somebody's on a GLP-1 inhibitor, when I hear that somebody's taking metformin because they can't manage their glucose, I'm just like, hey, fucknut, like this is 100% a diet problem. This is not like mostly a diet problem. This is 100% a diet problem. So what we have is a raise your children well problem. Now, you're never going to get that to 100%, just life is too complicated, but you've got to address that. You've got to put the structural things in place, both from a financial incentive perspective from the government and from a social pressure perspective to get people, like, one, we want people to have kids, but we want them to raise them well. We need both a female and a male influence to raise kids in a well-balanced way where they're getting all of the things that they need. So we've got to focus on that. Otherwise, you're just always giving people GLP-1 inhibitors instead of
putting Band-Aids on the problem.
Yeah, like you've got to stop the problem where it starts, and that's with how you raise kids.
Okay, bringing it back up to the society level. There's been a lot of talk of fiscal dominance lately. The situation in which the federal budget is getting out of hand, the federal deficit is getting out of hand, and the bond market is broken. I want to jump to this video from Andre Jikol, Jikh, on my smarter chat. People can tell me how to pronounce that. And his policy on how the bond market just broke the Fed.
So it looks like the central banks of the world are slowly losing control over interest rates.
There is breaking news as we come on the air.
The Trump economy is sputtering. We learned this morning that job growth in the past 3 months has all but ended.
The jobs numbers changed again, and we're now showing we actually lost 13,000 jobs in June. That is the first negative jobs report since 2021. And the most recent August one was also bad. We added only 22,000 jobs, which means unemployment is now at 4.3%. So to save the economy, the Federal Reserve might come in and cut interest rates by as much as 0.5%, which is huge. And in the short term, that sounds like a good idea. But here's the problem. The bond market is telling us we actually might be in a recession already. Investors don't believe inflation or debt can be controlled no matter what the Fed does at this point. Now, you might be thinking, Andre, I do not care about bonds. I don't invest in them. I don't buy them. But bonds run the world. They set the interest rates for the cost of things like mortgages, loans, and even the value of our currency. And it's not just happening in the US.
This is where we get into the economy is just complicated enough that, again, this is largely going to break along the lines of whether people have the intellectual horsepower to figure this out. This is why I like the idea of, if we're going to inflate people's money into non-existent, which I wish we would stop, but if we're going to do that, then setting up some sort of fund when kids are born where we either put one lump sum and then just let it accrue, or we like constantly put money into it instead of doing a lot of the entitlements that we're doing now. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. Otherwise, people are going to get left behind. This is one of those where people don't want there to be trade-offs, but there are trade-offs. If you deficit spend, okay, you can do it, Drew. Obviously, look at the world. Hey, we're here. We deficit spend. It looks the way that it looks, but it has these insane trade-offs. And the biggest one is inflation. We are going to take from everybody, and we're only going to give back. And I probably should explain to people what I mean by give back, but we're only going to give back to people that hold assets. They're technically not giving you anything, but those assets will respond from a price perspective to the amount of money that you print, just automatically. Because what ends up happening is you've got a bunch of people. It's always an auction, basically. You're going to sell it for whatever you can sell it for. As more money goes into the system, more people are willing to bid on those assets and say, oh, I'll buy that house for a little bit more. I'll buy that stock for a little bit more. And so the price is going up, 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 up. Now, why are they willing to buy it for a little bit more? Because they've got that money. The money is printed, it goes into the system. And so as people accumulate that money, there are more people that have enough money to bid on that thing. But because no additional goods have been created, the technical real answer is more money has been printed than new goods have come into existence. So the discrepancy creates more people competing for those things. Now, once you start understanding that, you're like, I know exactly where I need to put my money. If you don't understand that, and I know that even right now, no matter how many times I've said this, that because there are always going to be things you leave out each time you talk about it because it's so complicated, that it's very hard to get a total picture of things. Even I don't think I have a total picture of it, as I've said. I think Scott Besson would laugh at my understanding of the economy. I would not have known how to break the back of the Bank of England, which he did with George Soros. Too sophisticated for me. So that level of ignorance is the thing that holds people back. What he's trying to explain to people is that fiscal dominance. So fiscal means government spending, definitionally. Now the problem is, colloquially, we will use the word fiscal to just mean monetary. But fiscal dominance means governmental spending dominance. What's actually happening in fiscal dominance is the government is deficit spending at a rate that when the Fed tries to adjust interest rates to control the money printing based on the private economy, so based on borrowing to buy a house, borrowing to start a business, like whatever, all the things that individuals will borrow money for, because every time you borrow money, you're creating money. Let's just be very clear about that. So every time you borrow money, you're creating money. So it's an inflationary event. So what the Fed does is says, ooh, there's too much money coming into the system. I'm going to raise rates to get the average person to be like, ooh, I don't want to buy a house right now. I don't want to take out a mortgage. It's too expensive. And so the Fed's like, cool, we know how to regulate the how hot the economy is how they would say it. We know how to regulate that by adjusting the interest rate. As people start taking out too many loans, we raise the interest rate so they'll slow down. If people aren't taking out enough loans, then we lower the interest rate and people start taking out more. And so they try to walk this line. Fiscal dominance happens when the government is taking out money at a rate that the Fed has to print, or technically the Treasury, but they have to print money to keep up with it. And so no matter what the Fed does to individuals, the government's like, bro, I have to keep printing money. It's the only way that I can meet my debt obligations. So I am going to keep printing. And so the Fed's like, well, shit, then I'm in a bad position, because if I raise interest rates, I increase the rate at which the government has to borrow money. And then the train goes off the tracks.
Because I can't cool the economy because that makes it more expensive, but I also can't inflate the economy because then it makes it more expensive. So it's like...
So that's what's known as fiscal dominance. And so once you're in fiscal dominance, basically, and this is why Lynn Alden says this train has no brakes or nothing can stop this train. What she means is There's no way to stop it other than what Ray Dalio would call a beautiful deleveraging, which requires, among levers, austerity. You must slow down the rate at which you spend money.
Yeah.
And so right now we have a grow or collapse strategy. And I want everyone to be wide-eyed about that. Right now, every administration, Trump, Biden, everybody,
Obama, Bush,
all of them, all they're saying is we're going to grow our way out of this, or we're going to let it collapse when somebody else is in office. And that's it. That's the strat. And it is a terrible strategy that has led to all the problems that people can feel, but they don't know how to point to. And so they go, capitalism's broken, blah, blah, blah. That isn't the problem. Yeah. We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, here is the brutal truth about scaling. Most entrepreneurs don't outright fail, they plateau. And if you're stuck right now, you know how true that is. It could be that your revenue flatlines every time you step away, or maybe you're trapped in a commodity market that's racing to the bottom, or maybe you're one of the lucky people who is navigating a very complex partner dynamic that turns every decision into a battle. These problems and a whole lot more can seem impossible until you break them all down into first principles. My partners and I use this thinking to grow Quest Nutrition by 57,000% in our first 3 years alone and scale to $1 billion exit. And now I'm teaching this framework to a select group of entrepreneurs who are ready to scale. Now, I want to be clear, this is not for everybody because I'm looking to work with serious entrepreneurs that already have an established business and a proven track record of execution. If that's you and you want to learn how to break through your biggest business bottlenecks using first principles thinking, be sure to apply now. Just go to impacttheory.com/scale or click the link in the show notes. Again, that's impacttheory.com/scale. Now back to the show.
There was a drone attack on a boat running drugs leaving Venezuela. Trump praised it, took responsibility for the attack. They're saying that there were 11 cartel members on board, and this is why it was done. JD Vance then goes and says, like, I'm proud of this moment. I'm glad that this happened, yada, yada, yada. He got a lot of backlash, including some from Rand Paul, the senator, and it kind of goes into that notion of we're losing, especially with the Kilmar Garcia, we're losing due process. Now we're advocating for people who we suspect as cartel members to be killed instantly with no due process, no fair trial. Are we getting on that slippery slope where we're starting to give up certain freedoms?
On? Dude, countries live on that slippery slope. So this is one of those where the Jessipification, as Eric Weinstein called it, of America is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. But the reality is we have always had men standing on the wall that were willing to do things that if you knew about all of it, you would be disgusted. And yet, given that other countries are constantly trying to do that to us, it just is the reality. And I think this is why some of my take on Israel befuddles people, angers other people, is I'm looking at it and I'm going, that's just what total war is. So we've had God knows how many millennia of total war. And now all of a sudden, because of modern society, because we like to think that we're past that we're somehow at the end of evolution, all that, we're not. We are animals that kill people that fuck with us. That's what we do. And so we're watching that play out. And for 70 years, people kept it sort of in check. And now it's just breaking free again. You've got Putin invading Ukraine for a whole host of reasons. You've got Israel, a very complex set of reasons that include allowing them to amass stuff, amass the terror tunnels, to amass weaponry, to radicalize as many people as possible, knowing that they could do that because you have the belief that you can control the size of the flame. They then attack and you're like, oh shit, like maybe they let them attack, maybe they didn't, but they're just taking advantage of it. But it's like, whatever. And now they're going to go all the way. And they show absolutely no signs of like stopping until they get all the hostages back and Hamas is completely eradicated. They are bombing sovereign nations now because they think that there's Hamas like in those. Yeah. And I look at that and I'm like, is it evil? Yes. Do humans do evil shit all the time? Yes. Was what Hamas did evil? Yes. Is the way that Hamas runs the country evil? Yes. So looking at all of this, it's just evil, left, right, center, up, down, B, A, select, start. So I'm not embracing any of it. I'm deeply saddened by all of it, but it is. And so when I look at what we're doing, you have to, in terms of bombing that boat, You've got to, one, if there are people running drugs into your country, you tell them to knock it the fuck off, and they don't. And if we knew for certain that those people have drugs, that they are a part of a narco-terrorist state, and they are trying to get those drugs in, and you have given them warning, and they keep going, yes. Shoot, blow them up, make it real fucking clear what we do and don't tolerate. If it ends up that those are just like fishermen out on a boat, then you're the asshole. And you've clearly gotten like out of hand, and you've got to rein that shit in. And I have no idea what the facts on the ground are going to be. But the only thing I can tell you is on a long enough timeline, you get a bunch of shit wrong, and it's really fucking ugly. And you've got to be careful. But the one thing that you can't do is not defend yourselves. And so I am a big proponent of walk softly and carry a big stick, the very famous Theodore Roosevelt quote. If you have not read about Theodore Roosevelt, read about him. He was a hardcore motherfucker. This guy did not play. But he made very clear the only reason that you can talk softly is because you carry a big stick. And I think that the reason that people are so unwilling to back America's lethality, being aggressive, all of that stuff, is because things have gone too good for too long, and we don't realize what it takes to actually protect a country. So, yeah, I look at that and I say the specifics are going to matter a lot. I'll need to know what actually happened, but at the level of like, let's make it a thought exercise. If those guys really are Venezuelan cartel members running drugs into America, fuck them up hard.
I get that. And I understand that there's the nuanced take is the right take. So once we have all the information, it's easy to make that. But if I had to put like gun to your head, bomb or no bomb, drone or no drone, are you leaning toward the side of I'd rather blow it up and ask questions later, or should we have a more?
No, you have to ask questions first. We cannot become that country.
Yeah.
You've got to be very careful. But I really believe that we should be putting the money into the intelligence to make sure that we can figure out who's who and what's what, that there is an acceptable collateral damage. And yes, if it was me or my wife or my kids, they got killed and were part of the collateral damage, that'd be very cold comfort. I understand that. And everybody needs to fight for the position that they're in, which is why you allow for freedom of speech so that people can push back so we can figure out where the right balance is. But yes, I believe that America needs to be aggressive in its protection in itself. I believe that America needs to be aggressive in wanting to win. I think America needs to play to win. So you've got to do your due diligence. You 100% should not fire first and ask questions later. You should absolutely be asking questions first, making sure that you're as sure as you can be that something is right. You need to back off if you've got a certain level of uncertainty, but you're never going to have perfect information. But if your win ratio is high, then yeah. Like if we're 95% accurate, can I live with that last 5%? Yes. If we can push that even farther, would I be happier? Of course I would.
Yeah. Okay, that's valid. Brandon Gibson said, Drew, you don't think they had any intel? I don't think it's an intel question. My question kind of goes back to the Patriot Act. Once somebody's classified as a terrorist, all their rights are now thrown out the window. The cartel is now slowly moving into that, and I'm just trying to ask should we treat drug busts the same way we treat 9/11 attackers? And if everybody's saying, yes, it's cool. If you're in a cartel, you deserve no rights. You deserve to get bombed into oblivion. Okay. But I don't necessarily think, you know what I mean, that if it goes from terrorists to then drugs, how soon is it going to be murderers, really big shoplifters, and then before you know it, anybody who commits any crime now can get executed, judge, jury, you know?
For sure. And if we were to go that far, we'd be a bunch of morons that history should just be ruthless in their judgment of us.
We live on the slippery slope. So
100%. Yeah. But what you can't do, and this is like Jordan Peterson has a really powerful idea with raising kids about minimum force necessary. So you always want things to be minimum force necessary. But you need to do the necessary force. And if that means grabbing your kid by the arm and dragging them out of that situation, then grab your kid by the arm and you drag them out of that situation. Look, my mom swatted me. I can't even imagine how many times with a wooden spoon. And I did not grow up traumatized. She kept me on the straight and narrow. I have emotional control. And if people want to look at the results, I've been very successful in business, partly because my mother helped me develop discipline, largely because she helped me develop emotional control. My marriage has been successful for the same reasons. So it's like those things work. Now, my mom, I don't think ever spanked my sister because my sister did not need that. So she read the situation well. Both my sister and I have grown up well adjusted. So it's like, yeah, I think if you have the idea of minimum force required, but you are willing to do what is required, then you're pointed in the right direction. You cannot be letting mentally ill people out on the streets. That you've gone like just full moron at that point. So yeah, if you're violent, you need to be locked up. I would encourage people to think of us as automata. So if you realize that, oh, by the time somebody gets to an adult, so much of who they are is going to be baked. They could change, but they won't. Just the vast majority of people don't change. So even though it is possible, it is ridiculously difficult to escape your own frame of reference. So people get tied into it. If they're mentally ill, they're going to need to be medicated. You have a physiological problem. Now, the physiological problem can also be exacerbated by their thought patterns, but you have a physical problem. You need to address the physical problem. So if people stop, like the judge that let the guy out that stabbed the Ukrainian woman, she said he made me a promise that he was going to stop being violent. Like, what? Like, come on.
I promise you, Anna, I'll never murder another person again.
That is
Stab,
wild.
stab, stab.
That
Crazy.
is wild. So that's where it's like, okay, you're just completely detached from reality. And so it's interesting because the person that wrote the definitive book on us being automata is a guy named Robert Sapolsky. It's called Determined. I highly recommend people read that book. Extraordinary book. And in it, he makes it, there's, as far as I can tell, there's just nowhere left to attack him. I mean, he covers everything, including quantum physics, which people always go to. But he handles it all. Now, he and I come to a very different final conclusion, where for him, it's like all empathy all the time. And it's like, he's saying basically, I didn't earn my intelligence. I didn't earn my discipline. I didn't earn my emotional control. And while all of that's true, nonetheless, if somebody's a danger, you got to get them off the street. Now, he admits that he comes to that same conclusion, but he's far more in like you've got to be kind, you've got to be compassionate. And it's like, you've got to be effective. That would be my guide.
All right, so Putin's advisor, Koblakov, says the U.S. has devised a crypto scheme to erase its massive debt at the world's expense. The U.S. is now trying to rewrite the rules of the gold and cryptocurrency markets. Remember the size of their debt.
This is a direct quote, by the way.
Yeah, direct quote, $35 trillion. These two sectors, crypto and gold, are essentially...
Wrong about 35, it's 37 trillion.
At the time, it was probably 35.
Yeah, if he said it 9 minutes ago.
These are two sectors, crypto and gold, are essentially alternative to the traditional global currency system. Washington's actions in this area clearly highlight one of its main goals, to urgently address the declining trust in the dollar. As in the 1930s and in the 1970s, the U.S. plans to solve its financial problems at the world's expense, this time by pushing everyone into the crypto cloud. Over time, once part of the U.S. national debt is placed into stablecoins, Washington will devalue that debt.
The Russian comment that the U.S. is using cryptocurrency as a way to export inflation is absolutely true. For him to say that that is the very structure of crypto, that's what it's designed for, is false. But there is no doubt Scott Besson is a brilliant economic mind. He is one of the best economic minds I've ever come across. So he's in that very elite echelon of people who've made money off of understanding the economy and is now setting policy. And I think that he is very aware of the fact that if we can back stablecoins with a one-to-one U.S. Treasury, that would give us a huge market, wildly increased market for our national debt. So 100%, the Russians are right to point that out. That is very true. And then that we will weaken the dollar is inevitably. It is not and then we'll weaken the dollar. We have to weaken the dollar. There are structural realities to be faced. If you are deficit spending, you are going to weaken the dollar. Full stop, period, end of story. It's not possible to not, especially once you're in fiscal dominance, which we are in, where the government is ultimately, the government spending is the thing that controls the rate, because the Fed is not going to be able to reduce the rate for the reasons that we were talking about a minute ago, because private loans are not the thing that accounts for the massive inflationary effect. It's governmental loans that cause the massive inflationary effect. So you are in a storm where the US is looking for anything that will forestall the collapse of their currency, or at least make it so slow that it's still the best alternative, because that's what you're going to hear people say all the time about the dollar. Yes, it's being inflated. Yes, it's terrible what the US is doing, but where else are you going to go? Do you really trust the Chinese? No, you do not trust the Chinese. You're going to use the British pound? No, you were not. So it's like, you don't have any alternative. That's what people are going to say. But you'll be forced into an alternative if the US dollar inflates too quickly. So right now, barring that once in history growth rate that maybe we get from AI, you're not going to be able to grow your way out of a $37 trillion debt problem. You are going to have to eradicate some of that debt. And so you're going to have to do it through austerity, devaluing the dollar, and devaluing the dollar is going to be the big one by a country mile. So anything that helps them do that more slowly over a longer period of time increases the odds that they're able to remain the world's reserve currency. Because if you can drop the value by 99% over 100 years, most people don't really blink, because the US has already done it. I think it's 95%, but still.
Sheesh.
Catastrophic.
Sheesh. Well, because my thing, right, is I thought we were saying the quiet part out loud. I thought it was like, yeah, we're the world's reserve currency, but yeah, we're the people of the world. We're here for you. I feel like with the Russian advisor saying that, well, Putin's advisor saying it, it's kind of like, wait, America is just trying to look out for America. Why should we align with them? We shouldn't let them get off the hook. And with the BRICS nation being a majority of GDP, majority of population, they kind of have a bigger say on the global stage if they actually acted as a united bloc.
If you see a large number of people moving in lockstep, they have been coerced in some way. The only way to get a large group of people moving in the same direction that isn't coerced would be religion. And then you sort of have the coercion of God, because he's like, bro, if you don't, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity. If you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to get a large group of people moving together. You're just not.
Yeah.
So like, if you go back and research what happened in Bretton Woods when we actually became the world's reserve currency, it wasn't like everybody was like, word, man, all good. It was, hey, you all just got obliterated by World War II. You dumbasses wouldn't stop bombing each other. We, the US, were geographically blessed by God. And so, hey, we've come out of all this where you guys owe us gazillions of dollars. And so you don't have a fucking choice. If you don't want me to come choke you out with the amount of money that you owe me, then we're going to be the reserve currency. And for that, we are going to give you like certain privileges that you otherwise wouldn't get. And so they're like, I have no leverage. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm trying to get people to understand about, like, people want to go and vote and all that to get, better pay. No. That's not how this game works. The game works, you have to have leverage. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to let companies go overseas, you diminish your leverage. So if you want to increase your leverage, stop importing cheap labor, stop letting companies go wherever the hell they want. That's it. Like that is your only way. So figure out where your leverage is, increase your leverage. That's why it makes me sad for other people that don't have what I call the only belief that matters. If you put time and energy into getting better at something, you will actually get better. So if you reject that because you're cynical and you don't want to go get better, cool, then you're fucked. Because for the foreseeable future, we are going to keep outsourcing jobs. So I think Trump has a playbook where he's trying to bring high-tech manufacturing back to the US. We'll see. But also I think a lot of people are going to get displaced by AI. So there's that. But the one thing that you can do, and I get it, most people won't, because they have a very low utility algorithm running in their brain that's all about victimization, bad Mr. Capitalist, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so they don't try to up-level their skills. They don't try to figure out how to make money in stocks. And they just let themselves get inflated into oblivion and to really sit in the very real problem rather than looking for a very real solution to that problem. This was part of what watching the Patrick Bet David on Jubilee was like, yo, these are people that are they're mad as hell. And they've built really like sophisticated arguments against capitalism, mm-hmm. but they don't have any like first principles thinking on socialism and why it will work. And that one's very sad.
So it's more so capitalism bad versus like the
yeah, I can point out all the things that are broken, mm-hmm. but I can't tell you what we're going to do to fix it. It's just socialism, literally. And then they weren't even asking good questions in that, but I would be so curious to know, like what people think happens. Why do the ones go wrong when this has always been tried? Like, what is it that happens? Because you can't take an ideology in theory and then go, well, okay, I get that it never works in practice, but still the theory is so dope. I don't know how they rationalize it to themselves. Okay, so Patrick Bet-David went on Jubilee. It was 1 capitalist versus 20 anti-capitalists. And I am very eager to finish it. But the part that I watched, so I've watched the first half, and what I saw were young people that were very articulate about the things that bother them about capitalism. So it was a very useful insight into the people that I consider the sort of enemy of the public good, how they're approaching it, what their thought is, what are the things that are triggering them, so that I can make sure that like I'm engaging with people where they're at. Because Gary's economics really had a big impact on me in terms of like watching him be very emotionally eloquent, but completely ignorant to the real solutions. So he understands how to make money off of it, but he doesn't seem to understand why it's happening. And so that was a very interesting phenomenon, or is a very interesting phenomenon for me, where he's really captured the emotional tenor of this moment, but I think is going to lead people astray because he's feeding into their emotions. So anyway, this was people, I didn't feel like the anti-capitalists for the most part were in their feels. Like they were really walking through like, here are all the problems. They just don't have solutions. And they have like these really delusional views of socialism. Anyway, so this is where it was. Now, I love Patrick Bet-David. Talk about somebody who has been very kind to me every time I've interacted with him. I think he's very smart. He is a very talented entrepreneur. But, and by the way, I think I'm a terrible debater. Let me throw that out there. But I don't feel like his debate prowess was where I'd be curious to see like what he thinks, if he walked away from that going, no, I smashed it, or if he's like, I wish I had said this, that, or the other. Yeah. Anyway, let's play it so people can see it for themselves.
My first claim is incentive is the engine of capitalism. Remove it and the system fails.
Okay, so.
Do you agree with that claim?
Yeah, obviously.
Hey. Great to meet you, Patrick.
What's your name?
My name's Mason.
Mason, good to meet you.
Yeah.
Mason.
I'm value-tained. I'm a big fan of the channel.
Are you really?
So, yeah, I do watch it quite regularly.
Very cool.
I found this very interesting, that Homeboy is actually, I mean, if he can be believed, a fan of valuetainment. But he's going to make some pretty interesting arguments.
With your claim, I don't think that incentives are only born out of capitalism.
Okay.
Most capitalist defenders say
capitalism, incentives are not born of capitalism. This is like my big thing. This is what I think people miss about socialism. Socialism is out of step with the human mind, with our psychology. That's why it doesn't work. Capitalism is simply more in step. And I think it is right to say that capitalism is a terrible system. It's just the best of the terrible systems. We just haven't found anything that's better yet. It's not like capitalism is some amazing godsend and it can never be better, but we've had a lot of years to find something better and we haven't. So anyway, that's a misspeak. This is the kind of thing that I would want PBD to pick up on and say, well, hold on a second. That wasn't my claim. I'm not saying that capitalism gives birth to our desire for incentives. I'm saying our desire for incentives needs to match the economic system, and the economic system that most closely matches our innate desire for fairness, our innate desire for compensation is going to be capitalism. Then it's like he could keep reorienting to like what the argument is. You're going to see very quickly it spirals off.
Say that incentive is because of scarcity, and people's ability to get what is necessary pushes them to work harder. I disagree.
Okay, pause that for a second. So this is one of the things that ends up being like the big argument that comes up over and over, and we will run out of time before we get to see the pattern emerge. But one of the patterns that emerges is everybody saying, well, people shouldn't have to work. Like there shouldn't be scarcity. Like there should just be like a base level that's taken care of for everybody. And that should have been where PBD just said, pause, hold on. I love that. That's an emotional argument, because who exactly is going to work for free to provide for everybody else? This is the fundamental thing that people do not understand. The only way to get something for free is to make somebody work for free. Who are the people that you're going to point to and say, you are going to work for free? You're going to work for free for this many months. And that way we can give all this free stuff to people. That's where people, it is like they think that the government can just make money. And they don't realize that when the government, quote unquote, makes money, what they're doing is devaluing everybody else's money. And the only thing that actually creates money is entrepreneurship. Because you're creating something of value that people say, oh, I want that thing. And so I'm going to take this, what we call proof of work. We call money, dollars, whatever, but that's your proof of work. You did a thing. And so people gave you money for that. So you lock in the value of your time through the compensation that you got for doing that thing. And I'm going to give you my proof of work for this thing that you've created. That's the engine of all this. And then the government goes, cool, I'm going to take a little bit of your piece of work, proof of work, either at the income level or you can do it at the purchase level, whatever, all kinds of places that it can happen. Yeah. But like, I'm going to take some of your proof of work and I'm going to then hand it out to people in whatever way, building roads, schools, Social Security, whatever. But there seems to be a fundamental lack of understanding that that's how this engine gets going. And so I just need to know, like, okay, if you want to say people should be guaranteed this, who's supposed to work for free?
I'd say that some of our hardest workers are single moms working 3 to 4 jobs, and the resources that they're able to acquire compared to those that utilize their workers in order to build profit for their own companies is not equivocal.
So how would you do it? How would you change it?
Yeah, so I think that humans inherently want to be meaningful. They want to contribute to their communities.
He's 100% correct. There are 5 things that motivate people in terms of work. Meaning is one of them. Purpose is one of them. So for sure, like none of that is fault. My furry children have entered the field of play here. So he's not wrong about that. But again, getting to the claim is that the engine that makes capitalism work is incentives. And so far, I'm not hearing him say that people don't respond to incentives. What I hear him say is it's not only incentives. He's right about that. Yeah. I don't think people will work just for money. I think that's the big thing that people are always confused by is, well, I just made all this money and I'm miserable. Yeah, exactly. Because there's 5 things that people care about, not 1.
They want to contribute to society. When you look at depression rates, oftentimes it's people who aren't able to do anything besides laying in their bed and basically barely taking care of themselves. So I think that it's just a human intrinsic value to want to bring value to their community or greater society.
Okay,
so I don't think that it has to be through scarcity alone that scares people into working, if that makes sense.
I worked for scarcity. I think there's levels to it. You have the survival folks who work for survival to pay their bills. Some work for status, some work for freedom, and some work for legacy. The folks that work 3 or 5 jobs, to pay their bills and do what they're doing, if the incentive wasn't there, they wouldn't work 3 to 5 jobs. Some of the guys that build a bigger business that solve a lot of problems.
The incentive there is either I die or I work. That's not really a system that rewards.
So that is the argument you're going to hear over and over is I'm only working because I'm scared if I don't work that I'm going to starve to death. This is where you have to hit the timeout. Heard, you said that earlier. What I would like to know is how do we remove that need? And they're going to say, well, the government should provide this. How? How does the government provide this? What the gap that people are unable to cross is the only way to give things to people for free is to have people work for free. Who is it that you want to work for free? Like you saying everybody works for free? Like what are we talking about here? So this is the place where this just deranges and it drives me nuts. All right, keep going.
Merit, that's a system that pushes people into insecure positions.
Not necessarily. In many cases, we put ourselves in situations.
I'm going to keep beating this drum. And by the way, Mason, if people are pushing back on what I'm saying, I want to know about it because I want to address it. And we need more time.
They were pushing back earlier, but they're saying you're cooking now. So.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go. So rewind it, give me 10 seconds back.
Either I die or I work. That's not really a system that rewards merit. That's a system that pushes people into insecure positions.
Not necessarily.
So it's pushing people into insecure positions. If you look back through all of human history, the reason that we created governments was we come together as a collective and we were much stronger than when we're apart. That people would roll up to our village, they would rape the women or just straight kidnap them. They would kill the men, steal the farm animals, whatever. They would just take what they could. And so we're okay, we've got to come together as a collective. We've got to build walls and we've got to do all this stuff. And what people realized was, okay, for us to scale, because you can be communist in a family, you can think about sort of collective action in a small group, but as you get bigger and bigger, you need some way to incentivize people to do like that specific thing, right? Like I get you don't want to build the wall. I get it. But we need somebody to build the wall. And so it happens to fit your skill set, whatever. And so people go, listen, you're not going to have to barter. And the economy is too complex for one person to say, you go do this, you go do that. And so from that emerges, I mean, technically you go through all kinds of horrible systems first that allow people to be abused, enslaved. Like it's not like we got right to capitalism, but like you get all these systems that emerge where people are trying to decentralize as much of it as possible. And capitalism is so far the best system that we've gotten to, where we go, okay, cool. Everything is decentralized. You get to charge whatever you can. There's going to be friction between you and the capital owner is going to try to pay you as little as they can, but you try to get so good that you can demand a lot of wages, but it's all decentralized. You only have to buy the things that you want, blah, blah, blah. Government comes in and says, okay, you can't be an asshole like that. Can't overwork kids. Workers will do their best to negotiate for a better position, all that. Of course, it can go pathological. I'm not saying that. I'm glad that there are government regulations. That can also go pathological. Yeah. Anyway, but once you understand, oh, this was a phenomenon that came from the bottom up. This has to do with specialization. This has to do with not wanting to barter. This has to do with people wanting autonomy. It's one of the 5 things that motivates people is I don't want you to be able to tell me what to do. This is the very thing that drives people crazy in work. This is why I know anybody that gets frustrated with me is because they just want to control more of their life. They don't want to do what I say. They also don't want to take responsibility for making payroll though. I'll tell you that. But so I get like all of the like difficulties and the frictions of all these different things. But like when you really start to say, okay, but what thing do you put in its place? Like I get it. It sucks that we all have like, you can legitimately starve to death. If you can't make enough money or get somebody to give you kindness, you can actually die. And for a long period of time, people literally just did die. And one of the reasons that churches come into existence is they go, cool, like we're the catch-all. We take care of people. We ask our people in the name of God to give a tithing, and then we use that tithing oftentimes to enrich ourselves. But when it's going well, we're also taking care of the poor. And so we had this communal area where we could catch people rather than trying to do everything at the level of government. But people aren't connecting those dots. All right, let's a little bit more.
Many cases, we put ourselves in situations as well. But when we're talking incentive...
Are you saying that it's an individual failure for these single mothers that are working 3 to 4 jobs?
For some of them, it is.
Interesting.
For some of them, it is.
I'm glad you bite that bullet, because most people are not going to say that it's a moral failure of people that are morally...
This is where I started to get really frustrated. So the thing that I don't think PBD... He did not demonstrate in the first half of this that he is connected to the bigger picture. To have this conversation right now, you have to say, listen, we're in a situation right now where that single mother is getting eaten alive. And the reason she's getting eaten alive is bad social policies and bad economic policies. Obviously, anybody that's listening to me right now knows I walk through all of my greatest hits on what's exactly going wrong. You can round it to inflation. If you can acknowledge, listen, the system is broken. This is why I had an easy time talking to Hassan. Is like, we both agree on the problem. We just don't agree on the cause. Therefore, we don't agree on the solution. But we agree this thing is happening. This is a bad thing. People not being able to afford housing, as one example, is a catastrophe that has to be remedied. If PBD had said that, yes, that is a catastrophe. While I'm sure there are some people out there that really are just being lazy and living off the public dime, that's not our big problem right now. Yeah. Our big problem right now is we've got terrible policy, both financial and social. He does talk about the dissolution of the family later. But you've got to explain to people, I can describe the world that you see in a way that you'll recognize it. This is like the great test for physics. Any new theory of physics has to describe the world as we see it. If you can't explain how I'm going to step out of a 3rd-story window, I'm going to fall. If your theory of physics does not account for that, we have a problem. So you've got to show people, listen, my theories about capitalism describe the world that you're seeing. So let me explain to you all the broken shit. Then I can get into why the incentives or whatever, he obviously makes multiple claims throughout the video, but why the incentives are broken.
Because I wanted to jump into Alter Ego, the world's first near-telepathic wearable that enables silent communication at the speed of thought.
Alter Ego gives you the power of telepathy, but only for the thoughts you want to share. With alter ego, you talk just like you normally would, but without making a sound. Let me show you how it works.
You literally just think.
And for
If
those,
you're watching, the words are
We
appearing
all
on the
have
screen.
moments when inspiration strikes and you want to save an idea before it slips
It's
away.
when he starts doing this
You can now
with the other
capture those
person on
instantly
screen.
without
I
lifting
was
a
like,
finger.
this is insane. This is one of those where I was screaming, take my money.
Alter ego
Here
works
is
with
it.
your other devices, but it also works with other people wearing an alter ego. It feels almost telepathic.
Okay, they're just thinking words that are appearing on the screen. So theoretically, the other person is hearing it. There's a slight delay, which would get a bit awkward. This is V1. It's so wild, man. I am tripped out that it can read your brainwaves. It's got to be reading your brainwaves. But that is insanity. I'm so impressed. This one, I was like, holy bejesus. And it will also, if you want to go to the part where it's one guy speaking in English, the other guy speaking in Chinese, but they can speak to each other. That is amazing.
here it is.
So again, bad TV because he's just thinking, but the words are appearing and then you're going to hear it in Chinese. So first the guy's thinking in English, it then translates it into Chinese and speaks it in Chinese. And then the other guy's doing the same. That is wild, dude. How is it getting your words? Okay, now the cables that are running off the back of their head, that's obviously going to like
all
some
of the
giant
industry,
supercomputer or something. So they're not showing it for a reason.
off screen.
But this one I'm over the moon about. I want to see where this goes. If there was a version of this available for sale, I'm here for it.
Yeah, and
This is wild.
I think one part that we didn't show was that there's things where he said there's times where you want to write something down, but you can't talk, you can't grab your phone. So he says, take a note that I need to go do my laundry later, or whatever it is like that. Then he picks up his phone and then it automatically
Yeah, look, I
adds
mean,
to it.
none of that is like a big deal right now. I
Yeah,
think
just
that
another-
for that kind of use case, you're never going to be like, I wish I could be tethered to a big box that I'm hiding behind the couch right now. That would be so convenient. Like, we're not at the convenience stage. This is just showing you what is possible. But dude, the fact that you could have a conversation with somebody without making noise, if they're just receiving it and no one can hear it, you're literally using telepathy. Like, this is not like telepathy. This is telepathy. This is mental telepathy. This is insane, dude. Okay, so when I was watching this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is how it starts. You start getting things in AI where I've always said, when I start talking about AI, think of me like a sci-fi writer. I'm imagining what could be, not what necessarily is or will be. And so I know that I'm directionally correct at best, and the things that I'm saying are not literally true. We are now seeing that wave of things that are literally true. So this is never going backwards. This is only going to get better. And so eventually you're going to have like either just like a little device that plugs into your ear. It will be something very subtle, and you're going to be able to communicate with people in thought in any language in real time. And it will get to the point where it's so fast, there's no delay. Like, dude, when just extrapolate this stuff a little bit, and this gets incredible. The world is going to be unrecognizable. And I know that makes a lot of people very scared, but the world is going to be unrecognizable. And there's going to be so many cool things that come out of this. So yeah, this one I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how fast we've got here. This is awesome.
Yeah. It seems like it's a breakthrough. I'm trying to guess, I think, see what the application of it would be. Because to me, like the AirPods 3 with the live translation, I think that's the one that a lot of people have been waiting for. Like, everybody loves Duolingo. Nobody has learned a language yet. I think we need to start figuring out how we can minimize those borders and talk to people internationally. Like, I love that. So with this, if we get to that application, it's cool. But to your point, it seems like they're tethered to something. We don't see what that is yet. There is some comments in the tweet post itself that you have to say the words in your mouth, move your tongue. So it's not like you could just think it, but you almost have to like sound it out silently or something like that, so they can kind of cross-reference it. So it's not
that makes more
yet.
sense in terms of how it would be able to track it. But I don't see, there's nothing on their throat. So what is it doing?
Yeah.
I'll be very curious to see how it's picking up those signals as we go broader. But in terms of where does this go from here, the ability to speak to somebody without making sound is from where I'm sitting, self-evidently awesome. So whether that's wanting to be able to communicate privately to your wife, in my case, that would be amazing. To be in a crowded room where it's too noisy and now you can just talk to somebody, that would be amazing. Whether you just want to have a private conversation with anybody, you just don't want other people listening in, that would be amazing. Whether it's just talking to your device and not wanting to make noise because there's people around, it's super weird. That would be amazing. So, and those are just the things we can think of right now. I did not think of Uber. When cell phones came out, it did not occur to me, oh, drivers will all have these, people wanting a car will all have these, and with software, we can link them up. So I don't yet know what people are going to create. Are we going to talk about Sadia?
Yeah.
This is wild. We'll get there in a second. Teaser. Weird week for former guests of Impact Theory.
Yes.
And we're here for it. So the things that are going to be created will have these second and third order consequences of things that will become possible that aren't possible today. And if you're like me and future facing stuff gets you excited because you're like, I don't even know what people will create. Yeah. It won't just be the things that we can think of. It'll be those things, right? So I just did like a however many city tour on my vacation. And first of all, speak for yourself. I have learned Greek. It was wonderful being there.
On Duolingo?
No. Technically, very little on Duolingo. That admittedly is just vocabulary. But being able to speak another language is awesome. It reinvigorated my desire to really master the language because that I have not done. But the ability to speak seamlessly with all of the people in the different countries would have been really cool. Really cool. And things like this are, I mean, they're near future. It's wild.
All right, let's jump over to the new AI animated film that is releasing. The writer of Paddington 3 was led to write it. It's going to be called Critters, about forest creatures who go on an adventure after their village is disrupted by a stranger. It's cool. OpenAI has backed it. What got me was that it's still costing $30 million. So I was 100% thinking this was like, oh, they're going to VO3 80% of it, add in a VFX department at the end to kind of round it out. But
we're not there yet.
Yeah, it's still.
But if you're normally, let's say, 150 million, and you can get it down to 30 million,
in
you're
9
normally
months
3 years. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is, as a reminder, we are so early in AI. We are so early in AI. And for it to already be able to do this, now we need to wait and see if it's any good because it could be trash. And then it's like, okay, we're farther away than we thought. But if we're already at a reduction in cost of, let's say, 1/5 roughly of what it would have otherwise been, that if we're, call it 25% of the normal length of time, that's insane. So that's the kind of thing that gets me excited. And when I think about the impact that it's had on our development of the video game Project Kaizen here at Impact Theory, I know firsthand how much AI speeds up the process. So I'm not at all surprised that they're still like using animators. I'm not at all surprised that they're using like really good writers. I'm not at all surprised that it's still taking 9 months. And I'm also not at all surprised that they've reduced the cost that much and sped it up by that much. That all feels real. So I look at that and I go, I'm pretty optimistic that they're actually going to output something that's awesome. So yeah, that's thrilling to me because those kinds of like real world rubber meets the road reductions, but still using human talent, which is where I think we are now. That would be incredible. Like as somebody who just loves IP, the thought that we could reduce the risk so that people could take way bigger risks with the movies that they make. Lisa and I were talking about like, we miss the days of indie cinema where you could have like lower budget film that was just emotionally driven, character driven. Like that was a dope time to watch movies. Like Pulp Fiction, one of my all-time favorite films. No way that gets made today. It's way too big of a risk. And so if we can get to that level with games, with animated films, like that kind of stuff, oh man, you're going to start to see some really cool stuff. And I think there's going to be a really awesome period that we're going to go through where we're getting ultra high quality output. There's still a big enough like threshold that you have to meet to get something out that there's not going to be the absurd like influx of just volume of content. So you're doing away with the slop, but you're getting things out a lot faster. People can take a lot more risks. I think that's going to be cool.
Yes.
All right, we got to stop there. Guys, Boy, did I miss this. I really missed it. We have a special event going on this week, Friday. I hope you guys will all join me. This is a Zero to Founder Masterclass, AI Masterclass, this Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Please join me. We're going to be doing something special, but only for the people that show up. A thing that I've seen other people charge hundreds, some people thousands of dollars for. We're going to be giving away for free around an AI resources technically that we've created here. We're going to be giving to you free if you show up. So come, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to launch a business by creating AI personnel for your company. And we've got a set of free things only for the people that show up. Come, you're going to want this. It's very cool. So if you've ever had any interest in starting a company, you're not going to want to miss this, whether you've ever thought about AI or not. I will make this very accessible for you guys. We've got some cool tools we're going to be giving away free, but only if you're there. So this Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific time, Zero to Founder is growing like a weed. The last 5 months on the Impact Theory University side has been absolutely incredible for us. I really think it is the lives paying off. People get to hear how I think through problems. If you're thinking about starting a business, come join me. I will show you how to think through business problems. First principles thinking is the only way. So this Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific time, please join me. If you're there, you're going to learn, you're going to get access to these tools, and you're going to learn a lot about how to launch a 5-member AI team. I'll show you how to do that. All right, guys, thank you. I missed you guys so much. I'm glad we're back together, and I will see you on Friday, same time, 6 a.m. Pacific. All right, everybody. Peace out. Later.
Link in the description.
Oh, yep. Link in chat. Later. If you like this conversation, check out this episode to learn more. Trump attempts to fire Fed board member Lisa Cook. Trump signs an EO making flag burning illegal. Trump wants to seize the means of production, apparently. And Trump is going after the cartels in North and South America. And they